He did not hate his opponents. He wanted the best for them. That's where I disagreed with Charlie. I hate my opponent, and I don't want the best for them. I'm sorry. I am sorry, Erica. But now Erica can talk to me and the whole group, and maybe they can convince me that that's not right, but I can't stand my opponent.
Donald Trump made those comments over the weekend at Charlie Kirk's memorial, and if you're wondering why he would say something like this right now when we desperately need to unify our divided country, well, he doesn't want to unify the country. Last week, after a Fox News host asked him how to bring the country together, he said this.
How do we fix this country? How do we come back together?
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less.
Yeah, the only thing that's actually surprising about that comment is the fact that he used that term correctly. He also, incorrectly though, claimed that you don't have the First Amendment right to criticize him.
When somebody is given 97% of the stories are bad about a person, that's no longer free speech, that's no longer, that's just cheating.
Now, he was talking about news stations, but by that logic, both Obama and Biden probably should have shut down Fox News, since 100% of Fox News' coverage about both of them was negative. But pointing out double standards and hypocrisy is completely meaningless because the American right isn't principled, nor are they policy-driven. They are an extremist authoritarian movement motivated purely by absolute power and total control, as evidenced by the fact that Trump said that broadcast networks critical of him should lose their licenses, but of course it's up to the discretion of FCC chairman and Project 2025 author Brendan Carr. It doesn't matter that Brendan Carr also tweeted that the government shouldn't censor speech that it doesn't like back in 2019, throwing their own hypocrisy in their faces simply doesn't make a difference because they don't believe that they're being hypocritical. When Brendan Carr says that the FCC shouldn't police speech, he meant that, but what he really meant was that they shouldn't police right-wing speech. It's fine to police left-wing speech or liberal speech, but not right-wing speech. So he's only telling you half of what he really thinks. When Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth limits what journalists can and can't report, that's not an attack on the First Amendment to them, because they think the state is there to serve them and only them. When Trump said that Joe Biden's lawfare and weaponization of the Justice Department was bad, what he really meant was that it's only bad when Democrats do it, not when he does it. Now, in reality, Biden did not do that. His Justice Department was independent, hence why they prosecuted Joe Biden's own son, Hunter, which is something that he would not have done on his own volition. The independence there is key. But now that Donald Trump is in control, he's going full steam ahead with the weaponization he once denounced. He publicly called on his attorney general to immediately bring charges against multiple political opponents, including Adam Schiff, James Comey, and Letitia James. And speaking of Letitia James, he's forcing his own U.S. attorney, Eric Seibert, to resign since he didn't charge James with mortgage fraud, seeing as how there's zero evidence that she actually did commit mortgage fraud. But he'll presumably bring in someone new who's willing to cook the books for him. That is textbook weaponization, but in their minds, the Justice Department can only be weaponized against him and his allies because they're human and everyone else is not human. Therefore, everything done to us non-humans is legitimate and good since the Constitution only protects humans or real Americans. It's why he designated a non-existent group such as Antifa as a terrorist organization, even though no such organization actually exists. As Hassan Piker points out, anti-fascism is an action, not an organization. This is precisely the reason why this fascist administration will go after anyone expressing discontent with its fascist policies. Exactly. If you oppose this fascist administration, you could be labeled a terrorist because, as Steve Bannon of MSNBC put it, if the White House says that Antifa members are terrorists and the White House says it will decide on its own merit who and what qualifies as Antifa affiliates, this can get very scary very quickly. Indeed. So if the president thinks that it's illegal to criticize him and they determine who is and isn't a terrorist under this designation, you quickly begin to realize how the ultimate goal is to shut down any and all dissent. But in case Antifa was too broad, conservatives are trying to be a little bit more clear about their specific targets. Republican Nancy Mace introduced legislation to designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization in order to prosecute Ilhan Omar, a Muslim woman who is not a member of the Muslim Brotherhood, but nonetheless, the president has incited hatred against Ilhan Omar because she dared to condemn Charlie Kirk's racist remarks. It doesn't matter that Trump himself said this just a couple of days ago about Joe Biden, who was diagnosed with cancer.
You know, Biden was always a mean guy, but never a smart guy. You know, even you go back 30 years ago, 40 years ago, he was a stupid guy, but he was always a mean son of a bitch, you know? How's it working? Not working too well for him right now, as it says. So when you start feeling sorry for him, remember, he was a bad guy.
See, that rhetoric is fine because he said it. But if you don't whitewash Charlie Kirk's comments to an extent that even he probably wouldn't be happy with, well, that means that you're sick and twisted and you want right-wingers to die and you're a terrorist threat. It doesn't matter that they joke about Paul Pelosi getting bludgeoned with a hammer and lie about George Floyd's murder, because remember, they're the only ones who they see as fellow humans. So you can't really dehumanize us, their political opponents, because they never saw us as human in the first place. So the entire Republican Party and their media apparatus inciting hatred against the only hijabi member of Congress isn't dehumanizing in their eyes. And if violence comes her way as a result of their rhetoric, it's not their fault because she had it coming and was deserving of it, according to them. And again, since she's not human in their eyes, you can't dehumanize her. Now, the mainstream media is going to play along for the sake of civility and to avoid the wrath of the autocratic tyrants in charge, but they're not stopping at Antifa and Muslims because, as Ken Klippenstein reports, the Trump administration is preparing to designate transgender people as violent extremists in the wake of Charlie Kirk's murder. A senior intelligence official tells Ken they are cynically targeting trans people because the shooter's lover was trans. The administration has convinced itself that the Charlie Kirk murder exposes some dark conspiracy. The senior official explains that there is no process per se for dealing with trans people as a threat group, but feels that trans individuals will be increasingly targeted under the banner of, quote, violent extremism. And by placing so-called trans ideology under the broad category of NVEs, which stands for nihilistic violent extremists, that gives the administration broad authority to crack down even more on this already marginalized community that is 4 times as susceptible to violence than their cisgender peers. It doesn't matter that trans people statistically are significantly underrepresented when it comes to gun violence, in the same way that it doesn't matter that immigrants are far less likely statistically to commit crime than citizens. The goal is to force any and everyone who they view as undesirable out of public life in order to advance their goal of a white Christian utopia. And even though it starts with Muslims and trans people and immigrants, it ends with any and everyone that they do not like. And designating LGBTQ plus people as terrorists, by the way, that's exactly what Vladimir Putin did in Russia. And it's one of many things that Republicans are doing to target the trans community. 2 Republican lawmakers, both Nancy Mace and Ronnie Jackson, called for the forceful institution of trans people. A Michigan state lawmaker, the same guy who proposed a ban on same-sex marriage, is now proposing a ban on depictions of trans people and drag queens, which is also akin to Russia's queer propaganda law. And the Heritage Foundation doesn't think that the FBI's potential designation of trans people as terrorists goes far enough because they're calling on trans allies to be classified as terrorists too. So when you step back and you look at all of the moves that they're making really quickly, it's evident that they think that anyone who opposes them is the enemy. And they're currently building up the power to stop who they deem as the enemy from resisting their tyranny. At the end of last month, Trump signed an executive order that would allow regular citizens to join what they're calling a quick reaction force that allows them to team up with the National Guard to crush protests anywhere in the country. A civil liberties attorney called it the scariest thing he's seen in U.S. politics in his adult life. And I agree. They're giving right-wingers legal cover if they choose to violently shut down their political opponents. If you also don't like left-wingers or liberals and you want to eliminate them, well, here's one way that you can do that legally. They don't care if this is brazenly unconstitutional at all because the ends justify the means. To them, the Constitution is there to protect them and only them and nobody else. They simply do not want to live in a country with people who aren't them or don't think like them or who won't join them. It's acquiesce or be pushed out. And that was especially apparent in Stephen Miller's speech at Charlie Kirk's memorial, where certain portions literally sounded eerily familiar to a speech made by Joseph Goebbels, the chief Nazi propagandist. And Jim Stewardson on Twitter shared the speech and quotes from Goebbels' infamous "The Storm is Coming" speech that he made back in 1932. And I've got to say, it is chilling. And I'm going to put the quotes from Joseph Goebbels side by side so you can kind of see how similar that speech sounds to quotes from Stephen Miller's speech at Charlie Kirk's memorial.
The storm whispers to the warrior that you cannot withstand my strength. And the warrior whispers back, I am the storm. Erica is the storm. We are the storm. And our enemies cannot comprehend our strength, our determination, our resolve, our passion. Our lineage and our legacy hails back to Athens, to Rome, to Philadelphia, to Monticello. Our ancestors built the cities. They produced the art and architecture. They built the industry. Erica stands on the shoulders of thousands of years of warriors, of women who raised up families, raised up city, raised up industry, raised up civilization, who pulled us out of the caves and the darkness into the light. The light will defeat the dark. We will prevail over the forces of wickedness and evil. They cannot imagine what they have awakened. They cannot conceive of the army that they have arisen in all of us. Because we stand for what is good, what is virtuous, what is noble. And to those trying to incite violence against us, those trying to foment hatred against us, what do you have? You have nothing. You are nothing. You are wickedness, you are jealousy, you are envy, you are hatred. You are nothing. You can build nothing. You can produce nothing. You can create nothing. We are the ones who build. We are the ones who create. We are the ones who lift up humanity. You thought you could kill Charlie Kirk? You have made him immortal. You have immortalized Charlie Kirk. And now millions will carry on his legacy.
I mean, it's not a one-to-one, but the similarities are certainly there. He's conjuring up images that Goebbels also conjured up in his 1932 speech. But when you put aside the uncanniness to Goebbels and you just evaluate it on its own merit, either way, if you don't think it sounds like that, the speech alone sounds like a speech from a standard fascist demagogue who has thoroughly dehumanized his political opponents, who feels like they're entitled to complete domination and hellbent on vengeance. Like, either way, that speech is chilling. Stephen Miller is envisioning a world without the rest of us because he doesn't think we're good enough to live in the world that they're creating, and this regime is actualizing a plan to make that a reality. Our country has been conquered by white supremacists and Christo-fascists, and they know it. They know that they've won. And to demonstrate how they know they won, I want to share this short month-old clip from MSNBC, which features chilling quotes from a Charlottesville neo-Nazi and a Proud Boy who essentially declare victory.
On the anniversary of the deadly Charlottesville riot, where neo-Nazis marched by torchlight, chanting about immigrants and Jews, the lawyer who helped organize that event, that march, tweeted this: 8 years ago, you were an extremist if you protest being replaced by immigrants. Your life was over if you talked about stopping or reversing it. Now it is official White House policy. Never give up. While ex-Proud Boy leader Enrique Tarrio put it this way, quote, things we were doing and talking about in 2017 that were taboo, they're no longer taboo. They're mainstream now. Honestly, what do we have to complain about these days?
Yeah, so happy for them. So if you're wondering what happens after fascists capture control of an entire government, this is what that looks like. They crush their political opponents by any and all means necessary. Back in 1933, the Nazis used the Reichstag fire to justify the shutdown of their opposition. And it seems like that's where we are in history. Charlie Kirk's murder is shaping up to be the modern-day equivalent to the German Reichstag fire, and mere talk of shutting down their opposition is over. They're now doing, right? They're at the stage where they're executing their plans to crush their opponents since they finally have the excuse that they needed. And I'm not saying that things here will end the same way as they did in Nazi Germany, because history doesn't necessarily repeat, rather it rhymes, as Mark Twain put it. And certainly there are other elements of other authoritarian regimes that are mirroring what we're seeing here. Russia, Hungary, Turkey, the Philippines under Duterte. But I mean, if history is an indication as to where this is all going next, I'll just say it doesn't look very good.
Do yourself a favor and click the join button on YouTube to become a member. Because Mike's doing a great job getting to watch his videos before everyone else is tremendous. Many people are saying this. Join today, folks. You won't regret it.